This is Gamer Weekly, bringing you the latest of what the video game scene has to offer. On today's episode of Gamer Weekly, I have Bill and Amanda Gardner from Deep End Games, and we're going to be talking about their game, Perception. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of Gamer Weekly. Thank you guys so much for listening, and on today's show, I have Bill and Amanda Gardner from Deep End Games. Thank you guys so much for joining the show.
Thank you for having us. We're excited.
Yeah.
I'm really excited for the game that you guys are currently working on, too. It's Perception. For those that don't know what it is, what is Perception?
Perception is a narrative horror game about a blind woman who uses echolocation to sort of uncover the mystery of the mansion that's haunting her nightmares.
Yeah, so it's an interesting play on like your whole goal in the game is to uncover this mystery, as Amanda said, and the way you do that is by creating sounds to create sort of visuals for you through echolocation. But there's a big risk in that there's a creature we call the Presence that roams around the mansion looking for you. So you have to very carefully weigh how much noise you're making. And you're sort of piecing together this narrative, the history of this house. And a very kind of, we've been told a lot that it's very Bioshock-y, the sort of the way the narrative is presented. And a lot of that is because many of us have worked in the Bioshock series.
Including Bill, who doesn't like to brag, who was the lead designer on Bioshock and the design director on Bioshock Infinite.
You're bragging, aren't you?
I do it for him. Like he wouldn't say a word otherwise.
I scowled at her when she did that.
So, you guys also had a successful Kickstarter as well. So what was the initial reaction to that? I'm guessing it was just absolute joy.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were, it was very nerve-wracking going into it. It was a very different path from what I'm used to. And certainly Amanda was, it was very new for you as well.
Well, it was new for me, and I was also 8 months pregnant during the campaign, and yeah, it was definitely nerve-wracking, exciting. But I mean, we kickstarted when like 3 of the biggest Kickstarters of all time ended up kickstarting that month as well. So there was Ukulele and Shenmue.
Bloodstained was running, and then there was it's not Chris
Shenmue
Taylor.
Ukulele.
There was legitimately.
Oh, Bard's Tale. So the
no, it wasn't Bard's Tale. It was the fall. There was legitimately.
It was ridiculous.
4 or 5 or 6 of the most record-breaking campaigns out there, and it was just like, So ultimately, I don't know if that was a good, because ultimately maybe it drew more people to Kickstarter. Maybe they kicked us some money. I can't say, but it also could have been that like people were Kickstarted out. But ultimately, we hit our goal. We were pretty modest in what we asked for because we wanted to make sure that we hit that goal. And then it's also that we wanted to approach it from a sane perspective, and part of the reason we took on Perception was because we knew that it would allow us to not necessarily take on all the millions of challenges you have to deal with. I mean, like for example, we don't light the game at all because it's all lit by the player, right? It's all the sort of lighting is generated by the player using echolocation, and so that that saves a bunch of time. And so we were very careful about how we designed and engineered every aspect of the game, and so that allowed us to focus very, very carefully on the narrative and the experience and the atmosphere. When it comes down to the pillars of the game, those are really high up there.
And so with this game too, it's a horror game, but it's also kind of like a suspense game. Which one would you say it leads more towards, or would you say it's more of like a combination of the two?
I would really say that it's narrative horror, because the story is really rich and it's really deep. But I mean, it's a frightening game, but it's not frightening in the gory aspect. Justin, we were joking earlier about our
gore,
yeah, we're not big into gore, and I mean there are a couple of jump scares here and there, but it really doesn't rely on it. We really rely on tension and anxiety, and one of our biggest influences would be The Shining, and I mean that is huge when it comes to tension and sort of the way they sort of just make you so anxious in every second of it.
Yeah, no, that's pretty accurate. I think that we kind of have our own little breed here. It's interesting because a lot of people with a lot of the games they've worked on, like even with SWAT 4, there are a few levels in there that are they have all the elements of horror, and they're quite terrifying, really, when you break it down. Like the second level, there's a mission where you're making your way into the basement of this one serial killer, and he's got all these paper mache masks of women he's kidnapped before, and like it's really quite terrifying. But that's not a horror game. But you look at what SWAT is all about. It's all about you're stacking up on a door, and you're building. So you have this natural built-up tension where it's like, okay, what's going to be behind this door? And then you're stacking up, and you're waiting to give the command, and then you give the command, and everyone rushes in, and it's explosive, and things are shots are fired, and there's flashbangs, and you're trying to peer through the smoke about what horrors lie off on the other side of the room. And it's all very decisive combat, right? Like one shot you can go down, unlike a lot of like Halo or whatever. It has all of the elements of horror, and so we embrace that in a lot of ways. And the same thing here. I think that horror can mean a whole lot of different things. I think that for us, like Amanda said, it is actually much more in the on the shining end of the spectrum than I don't know, say like we're definitely not Saw, we're definitely not Hostel, or any of the sort of shock horror. We don't have any like sort of slasher elements, and that's fine. That's those games and movies are all well and good, but they're not really our style.
So it's kind of like how the previous big giant franchise you worked on before, Bioshock, it's kind of like that, where it's not necessarily horror, but there are definitely elements there that will scare the absolute crap out of you.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, I think that there are elements of all kinds of genres that interest me, and I like to try and work them in to everything I do. Obviously this is definitely not an RPG, and so there aren't really elements of that, and there's no city building or anything like that. But I think that I look for the core tenets and the elements that that resonate in horror, and that resonate in adventure games, and that sort of thing. And I try and bring the sort of things that I think are most important to them, and bring those out.
So I've asked this before on the show for another developer as well, who used to work on like bigger titles as well, and I kind of wanted to get on your take on the question too. So what made you want to step away from like what is pretty much seen as anybody that is in like the gaming world as like hitting like quote unquote like rock star status of like you working on like one of the biggest games? What made you want to step back and go, I want to do something myself?
Well, honestly, a lot of it was that my hand was kind of forced. The sort of, I don't know if you heard about Irrational becoming Ghost Story, the sort of remnants of Irrational, but more or less, Ken wanted to sort of start something different, and that's what he did. And they're working on something that sounds really cool that they haven't really announced, and I'm really really excited for them. I'm still really close friends with a lot of those guys, including Ken. But really, when it comes down to it, looking at Bioshock Infinite and whoever knows what we would have done next, I think a big part of it is, I was looking for something new. I think that, I had offers and opportunities you wouldn't believe to go not anywhere I wanted, but if I wanted to, I probably could have got a job just about anywhere in the industry. I've just been lucky to work on some amazing games. But, I think I want to try something different. I think I saw there was an opportunity in, first of all, to work with Amanda. So we've collaborated for forever on pretty much everything. And to be able to work with her on a daily basis was huge. But then also to I think you do need to go small now to take on the kind of risk that we're taking to, a game about a blind woman. It's not something I think you would do in AAA. And it's not even something you could do 5 years ago in the indie space, but I think the indie space has really boomed and allowed for, I think the audience has realized that there's a lot more you can do in games and embrace that. And so those are the big things, but driven from a desire to do something new, really.
I feel like with a lot of the indie games coming out now, a lot more developers seem to be taking a little bit more of a risk. I mean, even like with the I hate using this term, but like the walking simulator kind of genre getting as big as like, I mean, we get games like Gone Home or Firewatch where, there's it. A lot of people wonder, is it a game? What exactly is a game anymore? But they win like Game of the Year and all this stuff. And I feel like years ago, yeah, you wouldn't have gotten a story about a guy sitting in a tower just like,
Yep.
hey, what am I like? What's my life like? I'm handling all of these like personal issues and stuff. And do you feel like the gaming industry now, especially with like Steam and stuff, has become a lot more open to more of the original kind of ideas?
Yeah, absolutely. But I have to sort of say, okay, maybe we wouldn't have seen those games 5 years ago, but if somebody put them in front of me and I played them, I would have been blown away. Like I loved Gone Home and I loved Firewatch. So I feel like a good game is a good game, and that's kind of like timeless. Like they're both great stories. But yeah, would they have been made 5 years ago? I don't think so. But would they have been good if I played them? Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I think that for probably an entire generation, we lost a lot of risk. I mean, I think you look at the change between the Xbox One / PS2 era and making your way to the 360, PS3 era. You really saw an erosion of creativity. I think that I say that as someone who worked on something that's Bioshock that's it's known as hugely creative, but I think that a lot of that was came from that same spirit of that generation, that two previous generations ago, the PS2 and Xbox generation, where the budgets hadn't swelled out of control, and you needed to do something really outside the box and interesting, and have interesting mechanics and a fresh angle in order to stand out from the pack. Because I mean, if you look at the number of games back then, there were so many, and then we transitioned into that next generation, and it was like, okay, budgets started to swell. You started to see studios close because of that, and you started to see like the quality go up so much with games like Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed, where the budgets just swelled so far that the smaller guys couldn't compete. And thankfully, you had titles like Gone Home and games like Braid and things like that come out, where it made it clear that there was opportunity to do something that was smaller. You didn't have to go huge, and you could take those big risks. And so I think we're slowly we've been seeing that transition in the last 2 years in particular. I think it's all those chickens are starting to come home to roost, where you're seeing big. I mean, you look at something like Super Hot, right? That is absolutely something that could have taken place on the PS2. But on the PS3, maybe as a downloadable game, but you definitely would not see a boxed copy of that. It's way too risky, right? And so you started to see all these risk-taking games emerge over the past few years, and it's because they sort of went into hibernation for a while. But yeah, it's very exciting times.
I would say Super Hot was one of the coolest experiences I think I've ever had playing a game. Like, I felt like such a badass playing that game.
Yep.
It felt like the game that like 10-year-old me wanted for so long and didn't realize.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to what I was saying, is that, because of the nature of it, you could take on much bigger risks. Like, I think even if it came out in the PS2 era, you would have to probably include elements of, like, I don't know, character growth or something to bring that value, the sort of value add to the customer. That's like, okay, why am I going to spell out probably $40-50 for this game? And with indie, you don't have to worry about that. You just sort of you can sort of price it as you see fit, and just really focus on the core idea.
Unless you're a really big indie, and then you're like $40, and you're like, okay, whoa. I think, what was it, like The Witness or something was like $40, and I was like, maybe. And everyone's like, it's a great game. You're gonna be absolutely angry playing it the whole time. So
I'm just glad that we have a market now that can support all of that. Support all those different ideas.
I like that too, because they give me people to interview on the show. So,
funny.
Yeah, it's really nice. So like having experience with a game like BioShock, and then using, like, how does it feel to have like that game as such a huge influence on so many games that are coming out now?
Yeah, it's really interesting, especially to see, entirely new generations of developers, at GDC, like, for example, last week, talking about it and sort of their interpretation of what it all means and sort of, well, it's like we were talking about before the call. We were talking about Mario 64 and how, we look back at that. It's easy to take it for granted for the things it brought to the genre and to games in general. And I think that, if you look at Bioshock, really at the time, it doesn't seem like that much now, but at the time there really weren't that many games that were combining shooter and RPG, and now every game under the sun has RPG elements, right? But at the time that we were shopping that around, trying to pitch the game and get it bought by a publisher, there was a lot of resistance to that idea. I was like, well, people like shooters and they like RPGs, but do they really like them together? And so, aside from there's a lot that's been said about the narrative influence that it's had. And there's a lot about the world building and the mise en scène and all that. And that's all very important and very true. But, again, that merge of systems and genres was something that was, you didn't see all that much of, believe it or not, at that time. And so that's one of the unspoken things there. But it is really exciting to hear people talk about the game even to this day. Is it 10 years? 10 years later? 10?
Whoa.
Oh, it's gonna be 10 years this August. Yeah.
Whoa.
So yeah. Wow. Exactly. So it'll be 10. I know, right?
Crap.
But yeah, no, I think again, just really lucky to have worked with that team, and I think a lot of times, in a lot of ways, it was the right place, right time, where the team was extremely hungry and we had a lot to prove, and I think that the tools we had were mature enough, and that people were really ready for a game like that, and for something new and different. I mean, if you look at the year we came out, it was insane. I mean, you had,
oh my god,
right? I mean, you had we were terrified when we came out because we knew there was Call of Duty, there was Assassin's Creed, there was Mass Effect, there was Mario Galaxy, there was Halo 3, there was on and on. It was one of the I think probably one of the best years in gaming ever, 2007. And yeah, we were lucky enough to stand up in the pack.
And it was a fantastic game.
Well, thank you.
I mean, I still remember opening up that game and just playing just nonstop. And cool. I liked that, I like it in most modern games too, where it tells you where to go, just so okay, it's there, but you can go and walk around and do whatever you want, and you can always just go back to the main objective. If you don't remember where it's at, it's over there. But if you don't want to go over there, that's cool. You can do that.
It's funny. We were just talking about this. We talk about this all the time because we have a mechanic we call the sixth sense in perception.
Yeah. So we wanted something akin to the Bioshock Quest arrow, sort of that gives you the general direction of where you need to go, but allows completionists and everyone else who likes to explore to look around and then just be able to say, okay, where was it again? Oh, okay, in that direction. And we talked before we started recording about it's a fine line between holding somebody's hand and letting them go crazy. But perception is a dark game, literally. I mean, you don't want to make that much noise, aka make that much light, but you still need to know where you're going. So we have the sixth sense mechanic. You hold down the trigger button and you sort of see where you're supposed to head. And yeah, it's definitely inspired by the Bioshock Quest arrow.
Yeah.
And so, how has because you guys just got done at GDC, which I'm sure was absolutely incredible.
Definitely.
Great show, yeah. A lot of great response, a lot of great feedback. It was awesome.
How does it feel to get that kind of response and stuff too from just do you guys actually get to do you watch people play the game, and then
that's almost entirely what we do. Yeah, we basically at GDC this year, we were lucky enough to be invited to the Indie Mega booth, and so it's basically you just have a whole mess of little stations where all these, I think it was 15, 16?
It was 16 games, yeah.
Yeah, 16 games where they just have a nice little couch for people to come up and play, and then a headset and a big screen TV, and just people come up and sit down and check out your game, and so you get a lot of great feedback, and I really, really value gamer feedback, and so watch very closely how they're playing, and then sort of interview people after the fact to get their impressions. And you get a lot of great notes.
Yeah, Bill sort of has a famous line of "You can't hurt my feelings," meaning like, no, please tell us any feedback, good or bad. And I think it helps people loosen up a little bit. But yeah, the feedback was overwhelmingly positive at GDC, and I do think the Quest Arrow has not Quest Arrow, the Sixth Sense has a lot to do with it, because we had demoed it before, and a lot of people got turned around in the mansion a lot, and getting lost is kind of exciting, and it's also kind of frightening, but I mean, not to the point of frustration. So this was a nice resolution to that.
Yep.
And
that all comes out of that testing. And
right.
So, given where we are in the project, a lot of the feedback now has moved on to, fine tuning bits, but also bits about like comprehension for narrative. And again, it's a very narrative driven game. I'm really proud of the story that Amanda has written, and I think that making sure that they're understanding as much of it as possible, because ultimately, the goal is never 100% comprehension, especially a game like this where a lot of it does. I think it doesn't rely on a second playthrough, but I think it definitely benefits from once you finish it, once you figure out what it all means and why you've been called to this house in the middle of nowhere in Gloucester, Massachusetts, why it's been tormenting you, and you finally arrive and you piece together what happened, and you work your way back through time and see all the saga and all its fullness. Then be able to look back and say like, oh, I wonder what this meant. Oh, I see it. That this probably meant this.
It's fun to piece things together sort of after the fact. I mean, and I agree with Bill. I don't think that everything should be crystal clear at the very end. I mean, I look at the end of Infinite, and I remember sitting there with my jaw dropped for about 5 minutes, and Bill's going, well, what did you think? And I was like, I don't even know what I think yet. I need to process all of this.
I mean, if you know right away, I mean, I think it's great to have that emotional gut response, but if you're able to immediately parse everything, I don't know. I don't look at that as a win. I look at that maybe you're a little too simple. And obviously, simplicity is good, but and not every movie, every game needs to be complex and layered and all that sort of thing. But for something like this, where that's one of our key features and key draws, I do want people to walk away, and there's purposely a lot of things that we created that we want people to kind of debate about, to say like, well, I mean, what did this mean?
Yeah, some of my favorite experiences with stories in general, and that could be movies, books, TV shows, is talking about the meaning afterwards. One that comes to mind in particular for me is Battlestar Galactica, the Sci-Fi Channel reboot, and I loved just talking about it with people. And then once it ended, we loved sort of parsing like, okay, well, what did that mean? What did that imply? And okay, so what happened again? And you make this collective meaning, and I think a rewatch is always a good thing, and I also think talking about it is a good thing. Community is a good thing. So,
because there's definitely a certain game franchise that I've really loved over the years, and it's Half-Life, where you get really engrossed in the story, and then 10 years go by and you never get an ending. So I think that's
well, there's definitely
an
ending here. There's no question. It's mostly just a question of how you interpret it. And there are some pieces that actually, talking with some of the people who have made it through it, it's interesting to see that 90% have come out with a very clear answer. But there are also, occasionally you get that like 10% who is like, well, what if? And the group kind of is like, oh, and it sort of puts a whole different light on things. And, some of that's intentional. Some of it's, I'll be perfectly honest, accidental. But, I think it holds up.
So when you were, I'm sorry that we keep going back to Bioshock, but since so with Infinite, did you ever have like that feeling, kind of like, I guess, where Valve's kind of sitting with like a third Half-Life, where you guys were like, I don't know if we should do this?
With Infinite, before we started Infinite?
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And like before we actually started, there was, it's funny because there was a little bit of like, hey, what's next? And we're all kind of terrified because of the response we got from Bioshock. It's like, when you're talking about coming off of any project, there's always going to be like, oh man, we just scaled this amazing mountain, and now we're climbing down and we're getting all these awards and this accolade, and it's amazing. And then you're like, you turn around and you look at the next mountain, you're like, oh my. And for a follow up to Bioshock, that is just like something you didn't want to look at, let alone climb. And so, actually for a while we were working on some other stuff because I think frankly we were afraid. I was afraid of following that up. And I think that, it's unfortunate, but I think that Bioshock 2 gets lately it's been getting a lot of praise, and that's great. But I think it got a lot of flack, partly because you're following up directly Bioshock, but it's also you're setting it in the same same city and all that. So there are a lot of comparisons there that aren't going to be fair. I think that it has spent a spectacular job, but I think it also lets some of the pressure off of us. Obviously we decided to do something very different with a different setting and all that, and I think that I don't know. That we were always going to want to do something different because, again, that's even more daunting is to return to the same city, because, as much as you have a lot of the questions answered, about what does the city look like and all that, the dread of, okay, well, how do we make that interesting in a new way? That's in some ways even more terrifying. Whereas if you have a new setting, it's just like, okay, we can do our own thing. We're not beholden. So with Infinite, we could pick and choose which pieces we liked and didn't like, and sort of go from there. But there was definitely for me, and I don't want to speak for the team, but for some of the team for sure that there was definitely apprehension and fear. But I think once we started to really dig into the idea of, okay, it's okay for Bioshock to take place. Bioshock is bigger than just Rapture. It's more about a set of ideas and about setting and atmosphere and all that sort of thing. That really empowered us and gave us the courage to go ahead.
And so the final question is so it's going to come out for PC, PS4, and Xbox One for Perception.
Yes.
Are we going to see a Switch port of it?
We are enormous fans. I've been called, if you'll pardon the term, I've been called a Nintendo Nazi.
We are a Nintendo family. We love Nintendo.
Absolutely. So, I grew up with Nintendo. I play everything. I always have, but Nintendo holds a special place in my heart, and I absolutely love the hardware. And so I will say up front that we are absolutely looking into it. And yeah, I think it's really just about working out the details, but. Man, oh man, am I loving the system so far? It's been what? How many days? 2 days?
Yeah, I think we've spent most of the 2 days, on the Switch.
Well, not as much as I would like, but yeah. So a lot of great stuff, and Zelda is absolutely phenomenal. And I think again, there's a lot of really great features there that I think would lend itself very nicely to Perception, and that's what we're looking into right now. Is exactly what that would mean. So lots of exciting promise there for sure.
Well, I'm excited to play Perception. When does the game come out?
We're about to announce the date very shortly. We're waiting on one last thing to announce that, but it's this spring. So we're coming up on it pretty fast, but we'll be also hopefully making a lot of noise, leading up to launch. We certainly appreciate chatting with you because we need to, it's a very different experience. Coming from a game like Bioshock, where you had all of this, this massive team behind you and this massive marketing, Perception has very much been grassroots, and we've been able to grow it and get it in front of a lot of eyes. And so I think a lot of that is just us pounding the pavement and getting help from folks like you. So definitely really appreciate it, but we'll be announcing very soon.
Yeah, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for coming onto the show. Thank you for scheduling everything with me. It's been a long process, but I'm glad that we were finally able to work something out.
Definitely.
So, and it's also been really awesome to talk about Bioshock because that is seriously one of my favorite all-time games.
Wow. Well,
and that like Bioshock and Half-Life seriously are pretty much the games that for me were just they blew my mind, and it made me go to PC gaming, and I haven't looked back.
What's the biggest thing about them that appeals to you? Like, if you were to boil it down, why is it those titles that you like best?
I would say it's because they make you feel more involved in the world, and it really just the way that the world takes you enraptures you.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well done.
Well, as it like, because they plop you into a world you don't know what you're expecting, so like everything that you find is just like a mystery, like, oh, what is this? And then like the which every game now seems to be doing, like the little audio log things, but like at the time finding one of those things was so awesome. You find out more about the world and you're like, what happened here?
Yep.
And then you get the big twist ending and you're like, whoa, this is crazy. And Infinite just with the ending blew my mind too. And I remember talking to my friends, and we still talk about that to this day, about how crazy the ending was. And I don't want to spoil it, because if you haven't played Bioshock Infinite, you've been living under a rock and you need to play it. But it's just a really good game, and it's so crazy to see like how many other games have taken influence by that and take different spins on it as well.
It's exciting. I think that again, it was a different approach. There were a few other titles before it that had sort of entertained those ideas, but I think it was the first one that really made it mainstream. So that's exciting, and I think that I'm excited to be able to take a lot of what I've learned or what I've contributed to those games and put my own little spin on it, and to hopefully advance things, but certainly, like I said, revisit the pieces that I know that I'm familiar with. In terms of the atmosphere, the world building, the narrative, so hopefully if you enjoyed those games, you'll enjoy this, because I think there's a lot of very similar philosophies.
And I'm expecting Perception to blow my mind as well. So
I'm curious to hear what you think. Definitely let me know.
I will send you at least a bunch of emails saying, hey, this was cool.
That's exciting.
And if it comes out on the Switch, I am probably going to buy it for that as well, since there's 4 games out right now.
But one of them's the best. One of them is the best games I've played in a long time, right?
That is very true. Yeah. So thank you guys so much once again for coming onto the show, and everybody out there listening, thank you for listening. It means the world to me. And as of right now, as I'm sitting here, I'm looking at the view count, or like the listen count on SoundCloud, and I'm about to maybe break 5,000. So anybody out there that before this, if we don't hit it, I'm gonna look really dumb. But
you need to extend it a minute. Actually, I have a juicy Bioshock fact for you.
Okay. So
maybe that'll push it over the end. You talked about the crazy ending of the first Bioshock. A lot of people don't know this, but Bill his face is actually Jack. So a couple times in the game, you see a photograph of the main character, Jack, who never speaks. He speaks a little bit, but you never really see him.
He grunts.
Yeah, he grunts. But that face is actually Bill's face. So yeah, I'm looking at the face of Bioshock right here.
The face of Bioshock.
That is amazing.
Ken's the face of Bioshock.
This is the first celebrity that I've had on the show too.
Oh, funny.
So
I have to laugh too, because there are people on Twitter who use that picture from Bioshock as their avatar, and I'll be like, that's my husband's face. I'm really freaked out. And there's fan art. I'm like, Bill, there's fan art with your face on it.
I'm glad that the episode that may or may not get me to 5,000 is going to be the face of Bioshock.
It was actually a quick aside, since you brought it up. At one, I can't remember what convention it was, but I actually saw the face of Max Payne, who is a programmer at Remedy, and he hasn't changed a bit. He looks exactly like Max Payne or whatever. And he had a line of people. I don't even know if people were aware that it was him, but he was showing off some game. I can't remember what, and I was so tempted to go over and get a picture with him. But
Jack and Max.
I know he's too busy. So, but plus I love Remedy games, and Max Payne is one of my favorites. But sorry, we got tangents. Wow.
Did he dive in slow motion to talk to you?
I know, right? Yeah. That's how he was handing out controllers to play his game. He was just diving around. He'd be popping these pills all over the place, and then
oh my god,
a swig of Jack Daniels.
So This happens almost on like every, not like the awesome facts. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna wrap it up, and then like 5 minutes later, like we're still here. So
Amanda, yeah.
So I had to tell that story. It's a good story.
No, apologize. Yeah, we like, if we would keep talking forever. So that's
this is actually this is actually going to be the longest episode of Gamer Weekly as well. So this will be interesting.
We are honored to be
Yes.
to hold that honor. Honored to hold that honor.
Unless unless I get a bunch of comments and they're like, "This is too long." I don't like that it's this long.
Yeah, tell those idiots to shut up. Bill talks too much.
I'm not in that position to be able to say that to people.
No, I meant that's what they would say to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah. No. They can send you all the tweets. Yeah.
That was a comment. I don't want any of your audience to shut up. I'm not telling your audience to shut up.
All of a sudden, the viewership goes down to like 100.
No. I all of a sudden lose listens. Like, wait, no.
Oh. That's the Boston in me. I don't know how. I don't know when I'm being abrasive.
Well,
We're all a bunch of assholes.
well, once again, thank you guys so much for coming onto the episode. It's been an adventure, to say the least, and I learned so much about Bioshock. And the fact that I even got to tell one of the lead designers of Bioshock how much I love the game really is just an amazing experience for myself. So, sorry for fanboying, but
no. I love talking about it. It's obviously very near and dear to my heart, and something I'm very proud of. But it's also something I look very fondly back upon. So please, it's a lot of fun. Thank you.
Continue to stroke my ego. Yes. Continue. Tell me how amazing I am. I am the face of Bioshock Infinite.
It's honestly, it's weird because I look back at it and I look at again, it's such a cliche, but it really was such a team effort. I mean, yeah, like everyone, it was such a small team that everyone had such a huge role in it. And just looking at people like Chris Klein, who was the lead programmer, and John Abercrombie, who was the lead AI programmer, and Nate Wells, the lead artist, on and on, just all these amazingly talented people who've gone off since and done amazing things. I think it's a testament to how phenomenal the team was.
So no pressure. Perception.
I know, right? Yeah.
So once again, thank you guys for coming onto the show, and everybody out there that's listening. If I broke 5,000, I appreciate you so much. You have no idea, and you are actually helping me rebel against my parents as well. So, yeah, rebellion. So definitely spread the word on Gamer Weekly. Everybody out there, I would greatly appreciate it. And if you like the episode, I'm not going to say clickety-clack the like button. That was an example. I'm not saying that. If you could like the episode, that'd be great. Also, it's on YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, your mom's toaster, and the fridge. So definitely check it out everywhere you possibly can. And check out Perception as well when it comes out this spring.
Yes, indeed.
Thank you.
You can add it to your wish list, and it'll notify you when the game comes out. So get ready for it. If you like spooky games, play it. If you don't like spooky games, at least buy it, because these guys are cool. And
awesome.
Thank you guys for listening once again. I don't know how many times I can thank everybody, but seriously, like I am just like it's like the listen count just keeps going up, and I'm not used to that. So I'm just all over the place.
Just bask in the glow of it.
Oh my God, I'm just so red in the face, and I'm just so many emotions right now. I'm just a glass case of emotions. And on that note, once again, a million times again, thank you for listening. And if you stuck around to the final 40 minutes of this, you're a trooper. And support indie games, because they're cool and they're good games, and people should support good games no matter what platform that they are on. So
well said.
Thank you, everybody, and goodbye.
Goodbye.